There are people out there right now who are starting businesses.
Absolutely.
We know exactly what that feels like.
You're right in front of them, so it's like having a billboard that you're actually putting right in front of somebody's face.
When you're considering adding corporate apparel to your brand, these are some things that you should consider.
A lot of website companies, they build it and then they have the ownership of it, and then you don't. You want to own your website.
Welcome to the Marketing Compass, Blue River Digital podcast. Today we want to discuss apparel, everything to do with apparel, the printing process, the decoration, the design. And so today Nick Prentice is with us. He's our sales manager and our digital marketing department manager as well. And he knows a ton about apparel. And of course myself, Ryan Sigler, who is a designer. Have designed tons of different shirts and different types of apparel. So today we're going to get into that and discuss everything we can about apparel, and hopefully teach you a few things about apparel that you may want to learn and possibly order. Might make your ordering process more simple, more convenient, and just really understand some of the little things, behind the scene things about apparel. So let's get into it. Nick, how crucial is corporate apparel in today's marketing landscape? And then what are the key elements businesses should consider when incorporating corporate apparel into their marketing strategy?
So yeah, there's a lot there, right? So I guess first off, I want to start by not getting too bogged down or nervous about corporate apparel. It's just another form of marketing that can be used. I don't think we consider it in our marketing strategy enough. I think oftentimes it's an afterthought of things which hey, I should probably get our team some T-shirts for the spring, which hurts your marketing budget and your planning and all that kind of thing. But today would just like to discuss that it is part of your marketing strategy and how it can be used and how important it is, specifically from the design standpoint and just design brand consistency across the seasons that you have, the different events that you might be using them for, and that kind of thing. What was your last part of your question there?
Like kind of what are the key elements business should consider when incorporating their corporate look? What are the key elements on how they need to choose their apparel or display their apparel on their employees or et cetera?
Yeah, so that part of it really comes down to the industry that they're in. I mentioned springtime. A lot of the work that we do with corporate apparel has to do with companies that work outside, contractors, landscapers, things like that. So they're often considering changing out gear by the season. So obviously right now we're in fall. Thankfully, we've had a warm November this year, but it is getting colder. So we have a lot of our customers coming to us for hoodies and jackets, beanie caps, things like that. So the different types of gear considered really has to do with the industry. If you're more of a white collar type business, you may consider quarter zips like I have here, what you're wearing, something that can be put on over the top of a button-up shirt. Vests are becoming very popular. Those can be branded or non-branded. And oftentimes folks will just wear them with colors. So they'll just have a black vest and for us a blue undershirt, and that is branding. That's part of that's a part of that brand consistency through the corporate apparel.
So seasonal kind of decides what apparel you would order at that time or order ahead of time, and then let's get into like what the look should be. I know that kind of determines by everybody's colors and their branding, but how should apparel be branded for let's say if I'm a heating and cooling company, and what do you think my corporate apparel should resemble, or how should I display my company through my employees' apparel?
Yeah. Well, anytime you work with customers, I think you need to be presented in a way that makes you look professional and can be trusted. So anytime you're going into a customer's home or on their property somewhere, that brand consistency and the nice look that corporate apparel brings to your brand really lends to that. It's somebody that you can trust. So we do recommend that to our HVAC customers, as you suggested there. Just some consistency, whether they're all wearing the same type of t-shirts, same type of quarter zips, same type of jackets, so that they all have consistency. And when they walk in someone's home, hey, this is for such and such HVAC company, and I know they're here for them, and I could trust them in our home. Yeah.
Let's get into the next area, which would be decoration methods.
Wow, there's a bunch.
Yeah, so this would entail the different types of printing on how you actually decorate the apparel, which would include different printing methods, along with locations, etc. So can you provide an overview of the different decoration methods available, such as screen printing, transfers, direct to film, direct to garment, vinyl?
Yeah, there's a bunch. There's a whole bunch. So So you mentioned this earlier on in our previous podcast also. We want this podcast series to be something that's valuable and it can be taken away as information for you, whether you're working with us or not. When you're considering adding corporate apparel to your brand, these are some things that you should consider. We offer all of these. Not everyone does, and that's okay. But what we want to do is we want to educate you on all the different types of decoration processes that are there, and the positives and the negatives for each one. We've been blessed over the years to be able to add all of these different types of decoration processes to our portfolio, so that way we can answer our customers' needs directly. But you mentioned screen printing. Screen printing is like the granddad of all of them. Like, it's been around forever, right? So most people understand screen printing. It's a process where not only for garments and apparel, but it's also done on signage and posters and things like that. But it's a cost-effective way to mass produce large quantities of garments when it comes to simple designs and colors. That's an important piece. That's what differentiates screen printing from some of the other garment decoration practices. So as we're seeing a lot of times, and you see this on the graphic design side, that our customers are looking for lower run quantities and they're looking for more complex designs with more colors. That becomes really expensive to do in screen printing.
Yes. Yep.
The screen printing process includes a frame, screens, depending on how many colors, one screen per color, in most cases, and then a long process there as well, cleaning and reclaiming the screens and all those kind of things. So,
and then the dark room. So
yeah.
So what we're getting at is the setup cost is a lot more. So that's why the volume or quantity has to be quite a bit more. So if I've got maybe 10 employees that work outside and they need a T-shirt for every day, 5 days a week, or even 7, then we're getting into this 50 to 100 piece quantity to where one color and two color screen printing is really effective at that quantity and becomes a very good cost efficient way to produce apparel.
Yeah, whereas contrasting to that, if you've only got 2 employees, which is totally fine, you only have a couple employees, maybe you're just getting started, or that's just what your business model is, and you need a couple shirts a week. So you're ordering 8 or 15 T-shirts or hoodies and that kind of thing. That becomes very expensive to do with the screen printing process.
Yes. Yep.
So we've adapted over time and added different decoration methods. probably one of the first new things to come to market is vinyl. After screen printing, actually, it's probably been around just as long as screen printing. Vinyl definitely has its disadvantages. So vinyl is just a adhesive-backed substrate that's applied with a heat press. It's cut on a vinyl plotter. Excuse me, on a vinyl plotter, and but with that, you really limited to one or two colors. The more complex it gets, the layering and the masking that has to take place makes it more cost prohibitive to do that. But it's a good option for, say, very low run with customization done to it. Say individual names printed on the shirts or team numbers on the back. That becomes an option there. Direct to garment is probably the next oldest one, DTG. It's a specialized printer that prints directly to a shirt. The printers are expensive; they're hard to maintain, but it provides a full color option. When you're printing large runs, say 300 plus garments, so full color prints, direct to garment method is a great way to go because it eliminates the number of times the garment needs to be touched. You put it in the machine. You're limited to the number of machines that you have. So
and do those inks last a long time once in comparison to screen printing? Is the durability pretty close to what screen printing offers?
Yeah, so that's a great question. Durability questions come up a lot. Most everything in today's market, the inks are all pretty competitive, and depends on how it's used, how it's wore, how it's washed. But you can count on between 50 and 100 washes on just about any apparel process, with vinyl being the least of those. Just the drying process there, the heating and the drying over and over and over affects the adhesive on the back of that vinyl. So in some cases, when the vinyl comes off, you can take an iron to it and reheat it and reapply it, but that can only be done so many times. So when it comes to like screen printing and direct to garment and direct to film and screen print transfers, 50 to 100 washes, wash cycles. So that's probably 2-3 years worth of average wear. Now, if you have kids like my kids who finds clothes that they love and they wear them and wear them and wear them and wear them and wear them, obviously we're not able to get as long a time spans out of them, and they're a little more rough on them. But as far as for team gear, for your work crew or a community event that you're doing, yeah, you should get 2 or 3 years at least out of those. Direct to film.
Yes, yeah.
Direct to film is probably the decoration method that I'm most excited about. It's come a long ways over the years. The printers have historically been unreliable, which has slowed our process in getting into direct to film printing for garments. But there's some big name players in the industry that's committed to building printers that are reliable and maintenance free, or I shouldn't say maintenance free, but less maintenance on those printers, which allows more printing shops to get into direct to film printing. So direct to film is a process in which you print reverse, so you print upside down on a transfer paper with white then applied to the back. It's CMYK, which creates some color matching challenges possibly down the road, but I'll get to that in a little bit. But and then it has white on the back, and then there's a powder that's applied and then heated, which creates the whole ink piece to be a transfer. Then when reapplied with a heat press, that it activates and sticks to the garment like a screen print ink would stick. So a lot of really cool things there. Relatively low cost. It's very comparable. When you're looking at 3 colors or more on low runs is definitely the way to go. And when I say low runs,
As opposed to screen printing.
absolutely,
Yeah.
right,
Okay.
yeah. It's definitely the way to go on those low runs, like 25, 50 garments. Once you start getting to 100, we really have to just kind of compare the costs and see which method is the best way for you. Like I said before, their durability is all pretty similar. Colors are going to look very similar across the piece, so it shouldn't matter too much to you as far as the end user, the business that's ordering these garments, on which method is used, as long as it's the most cost-effective method for the type of decoration you want on the piece. Dye sublimation, I'll get into just a little bit. We don't do very much of that at all, just because DTF kind of fixed that issue for us and allowed us in there. DTF allows you to print on any substrate. You can take that decal that we print on their printers and apply it to any type of clothing, any type of metal, wood, coffee mugs, anything like that. So it's a really, really
I didn't know that.
diverse. Yeah. So it's a really diverse tool that can be used then. Whereas sublimation, it prints the same way, but it's a vaporized ink process that adheres to the fibers on the piece itself. So you could sublimate on pre-treated tumblers and coffee cups and things like that. You could sublimate on certain types of garments like nylons and polyesters. It does not do cotton, and it does not have the white ink piece to it. So it's not something that you can print on dark materials.
It's not going to show up.
It's not going to show up.
White to show
Right.
color. Yeah.
Yep. So that creates a lot of limitations to sublimation, and with the advances that DTF has had over the last 3 years, especially, really kind of makes it to where we don't use sublimation a whole lot anymore. It's something that can be converted, like home printers can convert to be sublimation printers, and when the heat press applies the transfer, it actually vaporizes the inks into the material. Mm-hmm. So it's really cool because it doesn't have much hand with texture and feel on it. It doesn't have any at all because it's all part of it. So you're going to get a lot more life and longevity out of it, but you're just really limited on what you can actually print on, which is why we like to be diverse in how we do all this. And I think lastly, a really important one that we haven't really touched on much at all, and that's just embroidery. Mm-hmm. Embroidery has also been around for a long period of time. It's a really cool trade. I love talking with people that do embroidery because it's an art. There's a lot of things to consider when you're embroidering. Stitch count is an important piece in your digitized file. So when you're talking with your decorator and looking to do corporate apparel, most of the time, white collar type apparel, which would be considered like a quarter zip or a button up or a polo, and most hats would use embroidery. You want to talk to them about the number of stitches that's being used, because that really lends to the complexity and how solid the design is. The more stitches, the more expensive it gets. So sometimes you'll have decoration companies try to get a low price, a low cost on a decoration, and go too low on that and really mess with the quality of the final piece.
Yeah, from what I've seen, like on text especially, like letters, if there's fine. Less stitches, you're going to see the individual stitches, which is going to not create a firm line or edge to the letter, and it's going to look a little bit jagged and not look as good.
Right.
So you're going to get what you pay for as far as stitch count and the appearance of the embroidery piece. Yeah.
Yeah, and then that digitized file is really important as well. So you just want to have the conversation with them about making sure that they care about that digitized file. It's not something they just run through a software. That it fits well with the machine that they're using, and it's that pattern in which they sew that final embroidered piece is going to give you the best quality look in the end. So there's obviously a balance to it. You know, you don't want to go overboard to where it makes your cost per piece too high. But you also don't want to skimp and make it look cheap or not represent your brand well that way.
Right. Yep.
I may have missed some in there. There's a lot.
Yeah, there's a lot there. We're going to get into the kind of the design side here a little bit, and just to touch on these, as far as I'm concerned as a designer, so screen printing with a different screen for every color, the printer actually has to align every screen is at a different angle, and the way it prints, they have to align those up. So on the design side, you have to design based on per color. And so when you get into multiple colors, it gets a little difficult to create
really
elaborate designs because you got to
design.
kind of keep it hard edge designed,
Right.
for every color. That way it's easier to line up. So that's how you design for screen printing. And then you got direct to film, which is why, Nick, I believe you like this method probably the best, is because the design is easier. We can design in full color because we're using a printer to print screen printing quality inks full color onto a sheet, and then we just adhere it just like a screen would be. It'd be hot ink directly onto the material. So that allows the design process to be better, more elaborate.
It removes the limitations for the brand, right? So if you're we've talked a lot about the landscape industry. If you're a landscape company that has a lot of color in your logo, you don't want to limit yourself on your branding by having to simplify your brand to 2 or 3 colors in order to get an affordable screen print process. That's where DTF allows you to be creative with your design, still be on brand, but be creative with your design, allowing some textures and some gradient colors within the design. Now there is some limitations to gradient from the design to the garment, but that's something that you as a designer understand, and that's one of the really cool things that I love about how our company has been built, is that we have graphic designers on staff. Ryan, you work on apparel every week as part of the branding for the companies that you represent and you do work for, and you need to understand all the different ways and processes that these things are required to produce, because the design is different. So by having graphic designer on our team, graphic designers on our team, I don't know how many we have now, 5 or 6 different graphic designers on our team, allows us to make edits last minute to make sure that the file set up the way it needs to. It allows us to design without any limitations to the brand. It allows us to be creative. I think of companies that look to try to maybe do fundraisers or things like that. If we're the team that's doing the graphic design and doing the printing, that's much more cost effective for you, rather than if you're trying to outsource the graphic design and then go to a printer. But those are all some good things to consider when looking for a decorator. Understanding their design capabilities and what setup and all that kind of thing is going to look like.
How does a graphic design background contribute to creating new and custom designs? So, how important is it to have a good designer and not just go online and find a design and then have it printed? How How important is that for a corporate, a business setting up their corporate brand through apparel? How important is it to have a custom design or a designer behind that design to really impact their
Well, I believe it's
quality?
huge. It depends on the brand. Sometimes brands are more simple than others, and you can get away with a standard design off of downloaded on a vector stock website or something like that.
Right.
But most of the time, that vector stock's not going to represent your brand. You're going to need something custom. The diversity of graphic designers on our team, and I keep going back to our team because I feel like we're blessed with some really great team members and designers. But the variety of design styles allows us to follow brands more consistently than what you could just find in a cookie cutter piece online. We've got designers with art backgrounds. We've got designers with more vector type design styles and trained in different ways and in different industries. So we've got feminine designs and masculine designs and modern designs and you name it. So when we talk about creativity and making something new, as typically we think of like T-shirts or hoodies, something that's going to be printed rather than embroidered. When we see that kind of work, that's where our creativity is allowed to shine, and when we can create something different and unique. I think of a wonderful partner we have here locally, Lake City Gymnastics. They are of course a gymnastics school. Fun. They have a ninja course and all kinds of things. Love to have them on the show, the podcast sometime. But they have a store that they use to raise money a little bit. They don't mark things up too much, but the importance of having a new exciting design every season is tremendous for them, because those kids and those parents don't want to buy the same thing they had last year. So it's important to be able to change and create something new that they're going to like and enjoy. And with that kind of same thing in mind, I'm thinking through the process we've had with Lake City Gymnastics and having to create something unique specifically for them. Allows us an advantage in the marketplace when it comes to other apparel shops, because with our abilities to print with all these different methods now, DTF has been a game changer for us, because there's a lot of varying sizes in kids from 3 years old to 16 years old, and then the parents and adults and things. So when you're screen printing, that's a problem. Not only is there a lot of colors in the design, but what happens when you have a run of designs that you want for the youth and then the middle school kids and the high school kids, and all of a sudden you have to create a different screen for every size of shirt. So because you're not going to want a 6-inch wide graphic that will fit on a youth hoodie. You're not going to want that on an adult medium.
Yeah. And then every screen has to be stretched, tightened. Has to go to the dark room and burn the image into the screen. Yeah. To allow the ink to go through, and then have to align it on each apparel. So that's where your setup cost is. So when we mentioned it's not a good situation, is because you're going to add $40 to $60 at least per screen, per color for each initial setup. So if you have 3 or 4 different sizes, then you're at $240 setup cost just in one size change and one color. And so over 240 garments, that's $1 a piece. Yeah. Just like that. So and that's at 240. So if you're at 100 or 50, you're adding $2 to $3 per garment.
Yeah. So we share these kind of things with you all to help you understand the process, really, and to help you think through how to be more cost effective with your ordering, because we want to be a blessing to you. We want to try to provide a great quality product at a fair price, and by doing that, we've found that we need to be diverse in all the different types of printing options. But these are the questions you should be asking your your apparel company on and how they're setting all this up, and how do we do better? Is it a fair question to ask? We love sitting down with our customers at least once a year. These bigger customers that order a lot of apparel, that we do a lot of changing and things like that, and we ask those questions. What can we be doing better? And we encourage you to ask your team to do the same. How can we get more efficient? Is there better ordering processes, things like that? And that's all the different things that we can customize.
I think we're going to get into pricing and planning real quick, and trends and innovations, but let's just take a quick break.
All right, guys, we're here for our first project spotlight, and I'm really excited to show you the WRSW car that we wrapped a few years ago. Now, obviously, as you can see now, at their most recent Ornament Smash event, they had their fans and folks that listeners sign it, which is really cool. But this was a really fun project that we got to work on. The design side was a lot of fun on the design, and we had our designer, Matt Stafford, is the one that put his genius to work here. If you notice, we've got an antenna, a tower here as kind of the main piece, and kind of the feel is the Jimi Hendrix kind of logo design, graphics feel to go with the classic hits. But the tower here, it represents the WRSW radio tower, the 50,000 watt power signal that they have. Huge radio station here in Warsaw. So it was just a lot of fun to partner with them through the process. You also noticed the orange and black that was used in the inspiration of the design that fits with the Warsaw Tigers. So that was all part of it. And guys, I got to tell you here, we've only been talking for like 30 seconds here, but I love that our podcast is inside. This project spotlight, we're outside. It is 3 degrees right now, -15 wind chill, so it is cold. But it's exciting to be able to show you guys these projects. So take a closer look.
All right, welcome back to the Marketing Compass. We're discussing apparel today, if you've been watching previously, and now we're going to get into kind of the pricing and planning for your corporate apparel, our ideas on how you should plan out your corporate apparel and how price might affect your decisions. And then we're going to get into maybe some trends and innovations, and then we'll close it up from there.
Yeah.
So, Nick, how is pricing typically established for corporate apparel, taking into account different decoration methods and quantities?
Yeah. So for us, we like to recommend to our clients the decoration process that would best fit them for what they're looking for. But a few bits of information that we need to know is first off the garment that you're looking for. We've been talking about typically like shirts and tops and things like that so
Different
far.
Seasons.
But maybe for this example, we'll go into ball caps. So we want to start with the ball cap garment. What is the blank that we're going to start with? Do you have a brand that you prefer? Sizing, and styling and things like that.
Yeah.
So we're an authorized Richardson dealer. So we have a large variety of Richardson ball caps, which is the Richardson cap that you're wearing right now is the Richardson
Which is
112.
probably our most popular. I wear hats every day because I don't have any hair left, and so I wear them all the time. And this is by far, the Richardson 112 is by far my go-to hat. It is so comfortable. Mm-hmm. It is a snapback. Not everyone likes snapbacks. Mm-hmm. Some people like the Velcro or the flex fit option.
Yeah.
But we have all of those.
Yeah. There's a number of hat options, name brands to generic brands, just depending on the price point that you want to be at. So garment is first. Secondly is a number of locations that you're going to want decorated. So on ball caps, we can decorate on one of the panels on the side, like you see on Ryan's hat there. The Blue River icon that we have is just another branding tool that we use. We can also embroider on the sides and the back. then another thing that we haven't really talked about any is patches. So we can do woven patches, embroidered patches, leather patches. All this kind of depends on what you're looking for when you're coming in. So typically, when somebody is chatting with us about, hey, we'd like to do some ball caps, they have an idea what they want already. Whether they're reprinting some that they've had before, or they've seen one out and about that they want something like.
And if you don't know what you want, if you don't know all the styles out there, we would be glad, to put a PDF together, mock-up of
A bunch of mock-ups,
and if we're not doing it, you should request that. If you don't know, then request a mock-up of maybe 3 or 4. Choose a catalog. We have a catalog, an online catalog as well as printed catalog of the different samples of hats. So pick a few of styles that you might be interested in, and then your supplier should be able to mock that hat up, put your logo or whatever decoration you want on that hat, so you can see what it might look like before you even produce it.
Yeah. So the mock-up choice is going to be an important piece, and when approving and finalizing the piece before we decorate, anyways. But so we've got the garment, we've got the number of locations, we've got the type of decoration. So we can, like I mentioned earlier, you can DTF, direct to film on ball caps. You can screen print too. We don't have any screens for that, so we don't typically offer that kind of thing. But some people do. It's a one color print, but our DTF pricing is very comparable to what that would be. That's a good alternative way for us. So
DTF and embroidery,
or patches.
Or patches are the 3 main methods of decorating a hat.
Right. And lastly is quantity. I just got to make sure I get that in there because quantity is really important. Not that we want you to buy more, but there's price breaks. So not only from a standpoint of production time and how many we can run through the embroidery machines at once. So we've got an 8-head embroidery machine. So depending on the number of stitches, so a good stitch count is 8 to 10,000 stitches is kind of our sweet spot with how our machines are set up. So if we set up a machine over here and then we continue to set up each machine all the way down to 8, by the time we get back to the first one, then that hat's done and we're able to swap it out and do
continuous flow.
Continuous flow. So that's how we can, with embroidery, find you price breaks. We also can get some price breaks from our distributors for the blanks. So depending on the manufacturer and depending on the quantity. So quantity is important. So we typically like to give you a couple of options when you're looking at pricing. So if I'm only needing 10, well, we'll give you a price for 12 because it's likely where the price break is, and we'll give you another price at 24. So that way you can see the price difference, and maybe it's something that you don't need those extra hats right now, but you will next season or later on in the year. So it's worth buying them at a cheaper rate and storing them and using them later on down the road.
So I just want to touch on this as well, is from a supplier standpoint, we get asked a lot, well, how much is this going to cost? But we don't really know because we don't know your quantity. So it does help to have an idea. We're not saying you got to have it down to the individual quantity, but like he said, the price breaks really come into play here is where if you're a company and you're looking at 25, then maybe have us quote 25.50 or whatever, and then if you're more, you're more. But that really helps us get a good understanding on how to price something. So when you're planning out your order, try to have an idea of a general 25.50 and 70. We don't mind quoting all kinds of different numbers, but at least we'll have an idea of where to start.
Yeah. So to be clear too on how a quantity is calculated. So different apparel shops calculate this differently. But for us, a decoration quantity is how many of that size of decoration and style of decoration is used. So for example, the quarter zips that we are wearing, these are 3.5-inch graphics that are used. So if that 3.5-inch graphic is also the same 3.5-inch graphic that's used on your ball cap, and you need 25 large quarter zips, you need 30 extra large quarter zips, you need 10 ball caps. Well, that's a total there, and I wasn't keeping track when I was saying those numbers, so I don't remember how many it is.
Over 50,
over 50 some garments,
Right.
right? So that's the quantity price break that you're going to receive, not that I need 10 ball caps.
And this is
so
mostly
price this way.
specific embroidery, because
Correct.
embroidery, once you have the stitch count and the design digitized, it's set at that size. So if we can make it work
Yep.
on polos, the quarter zip on the outside,
Yeah.
and then a hat, because those are really the items you want to embroider or button down. It doesn't really work on T-shirts because the material's so soft it'll bunch up, etc. But the more we can use that across platforms or across garments, then that's just going to save somebody that extra $1 or $2 per garment by
Right.
changing up the design, etc.
Yeah, so that same quantities calculation is used on printing methods like screen printing or DTF, based on the imprint size. So DTF, we have a lot more flexibility. Obviously, we can fit more on a roll of our DTF transfer paper. Where screen printing, you're limited. Screen printing, if you've got 10 extra smalls and you've got 10 3X, those are going to require different screens. Otherwise, they're not going to look right on the other garments. So we have to add them as a quantity of 10 and 10 instead of 20. So that's when we would say, okay, a better method for this is going to be DTF, because it's what we can fit on a sheet and would get you the price down that way.
By reducing the setup costs.
Reducing setup costs and reducing the number of size variations.
Let's get into what you're seeing as far as trends and innovations. Like, what are some of the current trends in corporate apparel today, and how business can stay up with the trends? Do they ask a company like us, what's going on, what's the hot, what's new? This is fashion somewhat.
Sure.
So what trends are you seeing, and what advice do you have for companies to stay up with it, and how they go about, looking cool?
Each season there's different brands that are popular. We already mentioned Richardson ball caps. OGO, that's what you're wearing right now, is an OGO polo, quarter zip, a pullover. Brands come and go as far as what's popular. Of course, Nike is always a popular option, and Adidas. Eddie Bauer comes and goes as far as a popular choice. Carhartt brand there for the winter type pieces, of course, especially. But as far as emerging trends and things like that, I'd say first one is, we've already talked about a lot, is DTF. I think that is something that more and more screen printers are going to start to offer, because the printers are more reliable and they're becoming cheaper. You can get a very entry level printer for less than $10,000 now. And now it's an entry level printer. You're going to be limited on size and quality of the print piece, but it'll do the trick, and so you're going to see a lot more.
So how does
getting in.
DTF affect trends? Like what about that process is going to make my apparel more trendy? Or
So it's actually the other way around. It's the trend that's forcing the DTF process.
Okay.
Because the trend is that folks are wanting to order more often throughout the year. Businesses are, with lower quantities and more specific designs. So they're ordering.
Are you seeing that they're changing it up more? Like businesses are wanting to change more designs per year, more prints, different orders per year, different looks, etc.
Right.
Okay.
Yep. Yep. So the years of the time of running 500 shirts at a time, I think is dwindling. We still do that for expos and trade shows and school field days and things like that, where they're all the same. Most corporate apparel, I'd say, tendencies are now going to 25, 50, 75 garments. That are very elaborate designed, higher end designs. We talked about OGO. OGO is very high end, very well made garment. Same thing with Eddie Bauer. We're seeing a lot of Eddie Bauer this season for Christmas gifts and things like that. So the quantities are becoming more elaborate on better garments and lower quantities. I think that's what's driving the need for DTF option, because in the past, if you were to come into an apparel shop and you may have experienced this, and it's a really hard thing for apparel shops to try to handle, because we know it doesn't make sense. Somebody will come in and say, I have a 5-color hoodie that I need 5 of these for a family vacation that we're going on, or I have this crew that needs 5 of these made. A 5-color hoodie is going to be around $100 probably, with a screen print process. With a screen print process,
right?
To where with a DTF process, the same shirt, same quality, same integrity and longevity of the garment, you're going to be less than $40, maybe even closer to $30 on that same exact hoodie. So that
you're talking
has
about
changed.
the decoration itself.
Everything.
It's not the price of the hoodie.
Yeah, you can get hoodies for hoodies and finished and out the door for mid and low 30s.
Well, I think we've covered.
Yeah,
a lot of the apparel
is
side.
Fun. Apparel is a fun piece of marketing. I think just to kind of finish and wrap it up, Ryan, is just that apparel should definitely be something you consider in your marketing strategy. It's not something you want to forget about and then realize you need some, and then it throws off your marketing budget. There's different reasons why you'd want to use it from a branding standpoint and consistency, and like you mentioned with the HVAC companies, kind of driving home and trustworthiness and integrity of the brand that's being represented through the apparel representation. So my hope is that through all of this, our conversation, that we just helped you, the listeners, the watchers there, that you can use this with your current apparel provider. If you don't have one, we would love to be that apparel provider. Obviously, as you can tell, it's a very custom process for us, that we want to learn about what you need, maybe what challenges that you have when you think about apparel, and how we can come alongside you and make that process simplified.
Yeah, and I just want to touch one more thing about the trends and innovations. I think icons are used a lot more,
right.
such as the bee here on my hat. I think social media, the digital age has brought icons, mainly because of the use of avatars and things like that are the little squares, emoji type situations. But I think icons are a trend, so I think they work great on hats. Anything that's not going to be red is often or is seen more in a faster time period, like they only have a couple seconds to see what they're looking for. I think the use of an icon on a cuff on the back of a neck is something that we've kind of have done more in the past. It's more trendy, more innovative and creative.
You're right. I think an important thing to consider there, and this is probably something you should bring up with your apparel company if you're considering to do something like icons, is making sure that it represents your brand.
Yeah.
You're remembering that, because if you're just wearing your ball cap out in public, you want to make sure that your target audience is the one that recognizes it, right? So there has been a number of national brands that have tried icons, but have done it in a way that is really far off from their main brand, and it's not recognizable anymore. So it's something you should consult your marketing team on. It's something that we do on a regular basis. Like you said, Ryan, it's becoming more and more popular. It's something that we've been including into our marketing and brand guides. Is logo variations, icons, and patterns, secondary colors, things like that.
In the way our icon started it was a favicon. It was the image at the top of a web browser tab that you see, that little square there. This is where that B came from for Blue River, and then we just decided, hey, that's kind of a nice icon. I want to put that on a hat. And so some of our trade show items, our hats, and I don't think we've stuck it on too many shirts or pieces above the waist.
I've got a hoodie with it on.
But yeah, hats, the icons has worked really well. We give away hats and stuff, but it's just an idea that is also it's kind of trendy and innovative and creative for your garments. But
yeah. So last thing, Ryan. I know we've said the last thing 3 times now, but this is really the last thing, okay? But you just said favicon. All right. So I've got 2 questions for you. You're from Ohio, so you pronounce things differently than we do here over in Indiana. Yeah. So favicon, is it favicon or favicon?
It's definitely favicon.
You say definitely favicon. Okay.
But now I don't know the actual term for the website that it's supposed to be pronounced. This is my natural way of pronouncing. Let us know.
Reach out and tell us how you pronounce this. Favicon or favicon. Okay. So and now the big one.
So you're Indiana, so is it favicon? That's how you pronounce it?
That's how I've always pronounced it, is favicon. But here's the big one.
It's a fabulous favicon kind of.
There you go. Your brother says this also, Wes, and he was on the show last week.
Okay.
Nike.
Yes, definitely Nike, not Nike.
Wes calls it Nike. Nike. And I'm Nike.
I think both. It's Nike. I think growing up,
you can't be both.
Well, I've been in Indiana for almost 10 years now, so almost half of my time in Ohio. But yeah, I think the way we were raised in Ohio it was Nike. But I'm used to both ways.
Please let us know. Send us a message. Tell us that we're off our rockers and which way it needs to be. And maybe it's a different way altogether.
We appreciate the viewership. We really want this podcast to be informative, not so much as a sales tool, but just informative for you viewers. Right. So let us know, comment, subscribe, all the good stuff.
All the good stuff.
We appreciate it. Thank you.
Thanks.